Okay, think about freedom for just a second. That feeling, right? Making your own choices, living how you want. It's, well, it's fundamental for most of us.
Absolutely. Deeply valued.
But what if freedom, just on its own, could sometimes lead to things that feel, I don't know, fundamentally unfair?
That's the puzzle, isn't it? It's the core tension we're exploring today.
Yeah, exactly.
We're diving into this article, Freedom's Manipulation and Justice's Imperative. It's by Member of Knowledge is King.
Right.
And it really makes you think about how freedom and justice connect, or sometimes conflict.
And look, you're tuning in, you care about being informed, you probably see freedom as, a pillar of society.
Of course.
But this deep dive, we're aiming to show maybe a less obvious angle, how just focusing on freedom might sometimes work against justice.
It's a surprising perspective for some.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the goal here is to understand that dynamic better.
Yeah.
So we can all be, well, smarter advocates for a genuinely fair society.
Makes sense.
Okay, so to kick things off, freedom? What's the usual understanding? The baseline definition.
Well, the simple version is basically the power or right to act, speak, think, whatever you want without someone stopping you.
Liberty. No external chains kind of thing.
Exactly. Absence of oppression, lack of restraint. That's the common idea.
Right, the dictionary definition. But the author here, they immediately push back on that,
They do.
suggesting it's maybe incomplete or misleading. What's the issue?
The author's point is, okay, lack of external control is important, yes. But that definition doesn't really wrestle with what people do with that freedom.
Oh,
The complexities of human behavior and society. Even if no one's actively oppressing you, your choices can still negatively impact others.
okay, now we're getting somewhere interesting. Freedom means choice. But some choices, they might not directly violate someone else's freedom in the classic sense, but still create unfairness.
Precisely. The article gives some examples. Think about economic freedom. On the surface, letting businesses operate freely, less regulation. Sounds good, right? Promotes growth, maybe?
Yeah, that's the usual argument.
But the author points out that same freedom can sometimes allow, say, monopolies to form. And these monopolies, acting freely, can then end up stifling competition, limiting choices for consumers, maybe even driving up prices.
So they're using their freedom, but the outcome harms the wider economy or individuals, even if they didn't, directly take someone's liberty.
Exactly. It's a systemic effect. It shows how one person's or company's exercise of freedom can create disadvantages elsewhere.
So freedom alone, not enough. That's the author's core message here. Not enough for a truly just, equal society.
That's the argument. Freedom is necessary, but not sufficient.
So what's missing? What does the author bring in to balance it?
The key concept introduced is justice, specifically what the author calls moral justice.
Moral justice. Okay, let's unpack that. How's it defined in the article?
It's defined as fairness and equality for all individuals. It's more than just not having oppression.
So
It's an active thing, a commitment to creating a society where everyone genuinely has equal opportunities, equal rights.
proactive, building fairness into the system itself.
Yes. It's not just leave everyone alone.
It sounds like it shifts the focus a bit
Yeah.
from purely individual liberty to also considering the collective well-being, equal opportunity for the group.
That's a good way to put it. It considers the health of the whole society.
And that's probably where some people might feel a potential conflict, right?
Exactly. The immediate reaction might be, wait, focusing on justice and equality, doesn't that mean restricting freedom?
Yeah, that's the classic tension. More justice equals less freedom, potentially. More rules, fewer choices. How does the author handle that? Who decides what's fair? Isn't there a risk there, too?
That's a really important question. The author's perspective, as I read it, isn't about imposing arbitrary restrictions just for the sake of it.
Okay.
It's more about setting a baseline, establishing those equal opportunities and rights so that everyone can actually thrive.
So the limits, if any, are there to stop one person's freedom from unfairly crushing someone else's ability to flourish.
Precisely. It's about ensuring a level playing field. The idea is that this enables more people to experience meaningful freedom rather than just restricting it.
That's a key distinction. Not limiting freedom per se, but shaping the context so freedom is more equitable, more widely shared.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the article also links this advocacy for justice with advocating for truth. How does that connection work?
It's a fascinating link. The author argues that you can't really pursue justice effectively without also pursuing truth. especially now, right? With so much misinformation, disinformation, it distorts our reality. How can we agree on what's just if we don't even agree on the basic facts?
That feels incredibly relevant. If everyone's operating in different information bubbles with different facts,
Yeah.
yeah, finding common ground on justice seems almost impossible.
Totally. And the author really emphasizes the responsibility here.
Responsibility.
Yeah, for those who care about justice. A responsibility to actively seek out and promote truth, even when it's difficult or unpopular or challenges our own beliefs.
Wow. So it demands intellectual honesty, a commitment to evidence over just narrative.
Exactly. You have to be willing to challenge misinformation, even if it feels easier sometimes to just go along with things.
Okay.
Yeah.
The article also brings up trust and patience. Why are those important in this fight for justice?
Well, the author suggests that achieving justice, especially large-scale societal justice, often requires some level of trust.
Trust in what?
Trust in the processes, the institutions designed to uphold justice, like the legal system, for example,
Right.
even while recognizing they're imperfect.
Right. They're not always perfect.
Definitely not. And it also requires patience,
Yeah.
real societal change. It's usually slow. It takes time, sustained effort. It's not often an overnight thing.
That's a good reminder. Progress isn't always a straight line. You need persistence, that long-haul commitment, even when results aren't immediate.
You have to be willing to stick with it.
And finally, courage and determination. The article mentions these are needed. What kind of courage?
It's about the courage to actually stand up, to
Yeah.
stand against injustice, against oppression, even when it's the hard thing to do or makes you unpopular.
Standing up to power or the status quo?
Yes. And also a kind of internal courage, self-awareness,
Meaning?
meaning understanding our own biases, our own privileges, and then being willing to use any advantage we have, not to reinforce inequality, but to actually lift up marginalized voices.
So it's not just about having the right ideas in your head. It's about the moral courage to act, to challenge things, maybe even challenge yourself.
That's a big part of it, stepping outside your comfort zone.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. If we boil it down, what are the main takeaways from this article's perspective?
I'd say the central argument is freedom, while incredibly important, isn't inherently self-regulating for good. It can be manipulated.
Right.
It can lead to unjust outcomes if it's not consciously balanced with a strong commitment to justice, to fairness, equality, those moral principles.
So the call is to prioritize justice alongside freedom, maybe even as the foundation for true freedom.
Yes. That leads to the author's ultimate vision of what real freedom advocacy looks like.
Which is?
It's not just about fighting against restrictions. It's about actively fighting for a society where everyone gets a real shot.
A chance to reach their potential.
Exactly. To be their best selves, but crucially, without harming others or limiting their opportunities. It's freedom interconnected with and really dependent on justice.
Okay, so bringing it all together for you listening. The core idea here is that complex relationship between freedom and justice. Freedom's vital, yes, but we need to be aware of how it can be twisted, how it can inadvertently create injustice.
That potential for manipulation.
Recognizing that and actively prioritizing justice seems crucial if we want a truly equitable society.
Yeah.
So here's something to think about, building on what we discussed. Consider those examples: economic freedom potentially leading to monopolies, that tension between individual liberty and collective fairness. Where do you see this playing out? In your own life or in the news, the wider world? Where is freedom maybe being used as a shield, intentionally or not, in a way that undermines justice?
That's a deep question.
And following that, what would it look like to shift the focus? To prioritize justice in those specific situations? What might change?
Definitely gives you something to chew on.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We really encourage you to keep exploring these complex, important ideas and how they shape the world around us.